so-called democratic activities, you will be amongst a minority that has a far bigger voice than the percentage, because they are an active minority. So certainly of these values, of societal values, change with time. Economic values change, political values change, sociological values change. 60, 70 years ago, there was no such thing as psychology, because the way people lived was much more of an extended family, and the uncles and the aunts and the neighbors and everybody chipped in, and often also muddled the whole thing even more. But at least there wasn't the privacy that we have now, especially aspiring middle-class parents who have their ambition to make more money, to do this and that, and therefore they bribe the child with more television, with more gadgets, with this and that. And so there is more and more, if you like, psychotic if you like, and deviations and so on by the poor child. Because those networks of impinging lights from the mirrors of other human beings are no longer there. And therefore we have this lopsided situation with immense amount of outer skill and university and other type of more and more, if you like, specialized studies, and less of social skills, inner skills, knowledge of who are we. I get back to the original topic, which was that we want to preserve values that ever last. Now they are already preserved. I don't think there is anything we can do. Values that we all treasure, such as knowledge, such as inner certainty, such as inner contentment, such as living light-heartedly, modestly. These values are ever preserved. They are not going to change. What is going to change is how are we in different setups, circumstances, are we going to live these values collectively. 50 years ago, the accountability was easy because the village and the neighbors and whoever, you had no option to run away. At the moment, the movement is so horizontal that it has more or less stopped any vertical movement. We move everywhere horizontally, but we can't move within ourselves. All of the energy is taken by curiosity. More travel, more travel, more travel, everywhere you go. So as with the excuse that you are learning. It's really not true. Most tourism in the world, which is the biggest industry now, hardly teaches any member anything, except that you are based in a similar hotel, you know what your meals are, your habits and so on, and you take a peek at something that is a little bit different. So you feel more secure in your habits. What sort of a knowledge is that? Knowledge is that aspect of information or a fact that you can use at the second, at the moment, in order to bring in balance and equilibrium. So it is what you need at that instant. That is knowledge. Otherwise it's information overload, as most of you are suffering from. So real values are ever preserved. They are divinely, if you like, designed, and they are within our heart. We all know what is the value of forgiveness. We all know what is the value of going beyond, your past memories and accusations and so on. We all know what is the value of going beyond anger. Hardly a conscientious Muslim is ever spared from being angry with what is happening to us now. Why are we in such a dire state? There is no easy answer, except that if you look back in the history, you find we have slowly by slowly slipped from the original values. A Muslim, first and foremost, must awaken to the light of Islam, to the light of the divine, which is within the heart. To be fully responsible, to know and live any moment ready for leaving this world. The only certain thing we can share between ourselves is that we will leave this world. We're not going to stay here permanently. This world is sandwiched between the unknown from which we had come to the unknown to which we will leave after departing from the body. So who are you? Self-knowledge is a key issue to accept the fact that of course we are angry about injustices. We are angry about our own, if you like, faults, having been given a map how to live, which is our deen, and we have now bumbling along every now and then, going into a cul-de-sac and having so many accidents in our journey. That means we are not reading the map fully. That means we have not internalized it. So we are to blame. So an intelligent person will turn that anger into knowledge of understanding how it came about. Otherwise, it is very easy to blame someone. And you may feel a bit better, you scream and shout and so on, but it's not going to solve the issue. The issue is that each one of us is caught wanting, desiring, inadvertently to get to the value from which everything else in existence has sprung, and for which everything in existence has been created. Allah says, I was a hidden treasure and I loved to be known. Thus I created. What is that treasure? We all love wealth. Whoever does not love wealth? Whoever does not love beauty? But we fall into loving beautiful objects, which simply are similes. They represent beauty. A beautiful object may break, may get stolen, may get lost, changes with time. But beauty does not change. We all know what beauty is. Generosity will take hundreds of different shapes, including, as I said earlier, one of the opposites. Sometimes generosity is to give, some other times to withhold. Generosity towards a child who has been eating too much chocolate is to stop it and divert them into something else. Otherwise they get hyperactive, and so on and so forth. One of the biggest sicknesses in our society, especially the middle class, upper middle class, is wrong eating, excess eating, too much refined carbohydrates, sugars. When they reduce these inputs in few model prisons in America, the attitudes of the prisoners changed. And as a result, of course, the tendency to crime. There is no separation between what you eat and what you think and who you are and your heart. They all connect. There is a complete unifying factor, and the unifier of it all is Allah Azza wa Jal. We must bring the light of knowledge of our deen into minute to minute, day to day, movement after movement in our lives. You cannot say that I leave it there, once become a Jum'ah Muslim or a Eid Muslim, once a year or twice a year. You're not doing yourself justice. Why don't you breathe once a year? You're hanging on air. How Allah has showed us that this entity, so-called I, which you pamper so much, you look after so much, so many hours you spend in the mirror, so many hours you look after, trying to have matching clothes and so on and so forth. And what about then the match between your inner and your outer, and between you and the outer world? We want this balance all the time between body, mind, intellect, heart. You are caught. There is no freedom other than submitting to this, if you like, catchment. Allah has caught us. And where is His hook? It's called the Ruh. Where is it? It's in your heart. And the Prophet ﷺ says, if your heart is well, everything is well. And it doesn't mean the physical heart, because they do relate, the physical and, if you like, the ethereal heart. It is another part in us which is, if you like, unseen. It is the subtle forces in us, or centered in that heart. And the king of this kingdom, the so-called you and I, is the soul, is the ruh. But the nafs, which is its shadow, wants to be the usurper. Now, usurping is very well known to us as Muslims, because we have had thousands and thousands of coups in our countries, coup d'etats, and usurping sultans and kings. In fact, as you all know, from earlier on, that concept of the best amongst us spiritually to lead us was soon twisted into the most powerful amongst us to mislead us or abuse us. There's no point in us just lamenting the past and cursing this and that, and we are all subject to the same historical, if you like, background. And as a result, we carry quite a lot of that sickness with us. Every one of us, if you are a truly sincere being, have been touched by the Quran, have really come to believe that there was this incredible prophetic effulgence. So of course we get saddened by seeing it not applied. Worse than not applied, being distorted in order for people to exercise a few years of power and abuse and misuse. So to get back to the original theme, that in this changing world, the change is increasing. The speed of change is increasing. Every year there are more radical changes than the year before. What your grandfather was used to, if he comes now, he will be horrified and probably will have a heart attack. Because the values, the ways of life, the style of life, the habits have changed so much, and is going to change even more. Early in the 20th century, the biggest event that changed the world was the internal combustion engine and its extensive use over 30 years. The century before was the age of modernity, basically around 1820, 1830. They again changed the whole world, because then there were a class of nobilities, there were this and that. Then this century now, we have the information, if you like, revolution or explosion or whatever. So there are going to be outer changes. The result of this, in fact, will make us people who have some faith that there is life after death, that there is another purpose than just having a house and a wife and paying the bills and constantly running to and fro the office and all of that. That if we believe that there is another purpose, which is to wake up to the inner zone, to your inner light, waking up to divine knowledge, waking up to the certainty that you're not alone, waking up to the absolute inner conviction that you're dependent on the one and only source, Allah Azza wa Jal, then you're relieved. Then whatever you're doing, you say, Bismillah. If it works, Allah has granted me. If it doesn't, I don't want drudgery, I don't want trouble. Maybe, may I be spared. So, if this is the case, if this is what our belief is, then we can balance a bit of energy and time that we spend to cultivate this inner circuitry with the outer demands, which are more and more and more. I had some years ago stayed quite a number of years in the States and in the West. Outwardly you find everything is beautiful, agreeable, in harmony. But you look at people's inner quality, you find they are rushing, running. There's no time for any quality, true leisure. Even their leisure on the golf course is hectic. You know, there's no leisure anymore. You can't sit and go into your nothingness. You can't dive into the oceans of the boundless vistas within your heart. So, discriminating people will have to make a decision. What is enough? You know, part of the problem here, and the huge also traffic jams and the increased fumes and so on, is because of that. We do not know what is enough. A businessman does not know what is enough. And one new gadget, one new toy, one new vista or pleasure, if you like, arena will bring others. It never ends. It never ends. So running after one little pleasure after another, there'll be no time left. What is pleasure? Is a small superficial outer point where you have achieved something for a moment or a second, you're content. You go out fishing, you were hoping to get this and that, and you caught this, for a second. And then they photograph you, and then what? Poor fish, and more poor than the fish is you. Then what? So why not go for joy whose source never ends? Allah says, I created you للسعادة الأبدية. You understand that in Urdu also. Sa'ada means happiness. Abadiyya means forever. So if you and I experience blips of happiness, these are small little flashes of the source and the root of permanent, eternal well of joy which is in my heart. If somebody outwardly gives you that, be sure also they'll take it away from you. Because whoever comes outwardly will also disappear. But if the outer flash or relationship helps you to dig your own inner, then you are on a reasonable track. That is why most marriages fail, because she expects he is going to be God and beyond, and he expects she is going to be 1,000 times better than Eve, and it's disaster. Expect from each other to complement each other, cover each other's faults, anxieties, ups and downs. No one in this life will not experience a lot of movement and a lot of failures and a lot of difficulties. Help each other at that time, like you do with your same genders, men to men and women to women, to remind them that it will pass. It will not remain too long. Your pain will move. In fact, the biggest gift Allah has given humanity is pain. If your finger is caught in the door and you don't have pain, you lose it. Really, just think of it. So do not, you have to have a wider and deeper, if you like, relationship with events. Not this fixed thing, I have pain. Great, if you don't have pain, you're finished, and so on and so forth. And if you don't make mistakes, how can you take the take? Mistake. These are all the ways of Allah. So as we are drawn into that zone of values that are permanent. The ultimate value, the ultimate gift is the human ability to transcend the limitations of this world. Everything in this world has a limitation, except your ruh. Your ruh is from the boundless zone, limitless, is like an energy field that has been given to you for a while to activate this mithal, this simile of kingdom, and its shadow is counterpart, is your nafs, is your lower self, is your ego. And as you grow, the ego has to be completely and utterly transcended into your soul. Then you live as a soul within this body. Shorter or longer, then it does not matter. You are neither looking forward to death, nor are you scared of it, nor backward to it. You're completely neutral, because you know that by now death is only a transition from this limiting world to a limitless zone that you are prepared for. A baby comes into this world, gets prepared for this world by movement and change. The mother becomes flustered if the baby does not respond to the change that she brings about, movement and change and noise. And then if you're not moving into this world to discriminate between these movements and changes and the cause and effect, how can you then later on move out of it into another zone of subtler knowledges, designs, meanings? In fact, we all suffer from lives which are not meaningful, which have not been in every way directed towards a clear goal. That is why everybody is bumping into everybody else, because question yourself, please, when you go back tonight, what is your goal in life? What is your purpose in life? What is the meaning of your life? As a mother or a father, maybe you have been instrumental by producing few children, often by accident, by bumping into each other. Really, because do you know what the purpose of life is, so you produce others? Really, have you ever thought of that? Have you discovered the perfection behind the apparent imperfection? Then what right have you got to do it to others? We don't question that. And we also recite as Muslims certain traditions and certain teachings that were 100% applicable at their own times. I believe most of you have heard of Imam Ghazali, one of the most prominent Muslim scholars of over 1,000 years. Now, do you know Imam Ghazali in the last few years had brought out so many interesting facets of our deen that were even then shocking, such as his advice to close people to him that it's not a good time to get married because your wife will distract you from doing your duty towards yourself. So they objected, of course, as always, people with a bit of knowledge object that, but this is the sunnah of Rasulullah. He said at his time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at his time everybody was poor and the Muslims were few, and therefore he encouraged it quite correctly, and this gave the ummah strength and so on and so on. But now we are living in luxury, demands, superficialities, kings and queens and all of the other outer, if you like, paraphernalia. Your wife may have so much demands that you will not be able to fulfill your duties towards yourself, if not her family. So he was cautioning people that you have to care for yourself before you can care for others. You're responsible for yourself. Where are you going? What is death? What is life? What are the values that we really need to preserve before you try to really make sense out of the ever-changing world? Now, as we said earlier, the world with its physicality, with its all of the different numerous layers of energy fields, of seen and unseen, we are in the middle of that world. If you look down towards the subatomic world, it's another world. Within it there are other worlds and more worlds. And if you look in the other side of the galaxies and astrophysics, again, more and more and more and more galaxies, billions more than there are sand grains on our Earth. It's again mind-boggling. So as we utilize the mind where it can work, confined. See, my mind cannot absorb this. So go into your silence and see whether your heart tells you something. We have within us these two zones, one of which is over-cultivated. You become very clever in your mind and how to abuse the others and everything else. And the other one is underdeveloped. This is our sickness. And this is not just a Muslim or a special sickness to any people or society. It is a global sickness. There is not enough time for us, not enough energy, not enough quality attention to transcend the mind. Use the mind, enjoy it, change it, but how much access do you have to your heart? So, to get back to our original theme, that we need to preserve values. The ultimate value is knowledge that you are not who you think you are. Think back when you were 10 years old, and at a time then when you used to say I. You still say I. Are you the same? There has been a change. So your world has changed. But yet there is the same, if you like, noun or the same sound is used. So there is a constancy in you that has not changed, by means of which you know you have changed. Somebody sees you, say again, it's 5 years since I've seen you, you have changed. He says, of course I've changed. Thank God I've changed. But there is in me something that never ever changes. That's why I know I have changed. You know that your anger varies. You know, your anger before food or when you are fasting is usually more than after breaking the fast, or when